When a homeless man asked U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi for $1 outside a Los Angeles cafe, he never expected her life-changing response. "Sit down. Let's talk." Watch how her words, "What's the next chapter of your story?" and a single business card sparked a journey from despair to hope. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and please complete our 1,000 subscribers for more inspiring stories. What would you do if the U.S. Attorney General offered you more than just $1 on a random afternoon? It was a mild day in Los Angeles, the kind where the sun felt warm enough to balance the cool breeze. Outside a quiet cafe on Melrose Avenue, a woman sat at one of the outdoor tables, her sunglasses partially shielding her face. She was unmistakable. Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General. Though her years in public service had softened some of her sharper edges, her commanding presence remained undeniable. Passers-by occasionally glanced her way, unsure whether to interrupt the high-profile figure's moment of solitude. Across the street, another figure stood unnoticed by most. His clothes were worn and layered, each piece a testament to days spent weathering the elements. His hair was disheveled, and he clutched a small cardboard sign in one hand while the other fidgeted nervously in his pocket. His name was Kevin, and today marked his third week sleeping behind the dumpster of a nearby convenience store. He hadn't eaten a full meal in 2 days. His stomach gnawed at him, a relentless reminder of how far he'd fallen. As he scanned the cafe for someone approachable, his eyes locked on Pam Bondi. At first he hesitated. What could a woman like her, a titan of justice, care about someone like him? But hunger has a way of eroding pride. Taking a deep breath, Kevin crossed the street, each step heavier than the last. His voice was barely audible as he approached her table. "Ma'am, can you spare $1?" Pam looked up slowly, removing her sunglasses. Her expression was unreadable, and for a moment Kevin wondered if he'd made a mistake. But then Pam leaned back in her chair, studying Kevin as if piecing together a case. The silence stretched on, and Kevin's anxiety grew. He was about to apologize and walk away when she finally spoke. $1, huh?" she said, her tone neutral. Then, with a faint smile, she added, "Sit down, let's talk." Kevin hesitated. The invitation felt surreal, like something out of a courtroom drama he'd once watched when life was simpler. He searched her face for a hint of mockery, but there was none. Just a calm curiosity that left him feeling exposed yet oddly at ease. With a quiet, "Thank you," Kevin eased into the chair across from her, his hands trembling slightly as he set the cardboard sign on the table, angling it to avoid drawing attention. He could feel the weight of Pam's gaze, not judgmental but inquisitive, as if she genuinely wanted to understand the story behind his worn appearance. Kevin wasn't used to this. Most people avoided eye contact or tossed him spare change without a second thought. No one cared to hear his story anymore. But sitting there, under the steady gaze of someone he'd never imagined meeting, the words began to spill out. "I'm sorry if I bothered you," Kevin stammered, his voice raw. I don't like asking. I've been trying to find work, but it's hard. Harder than I thought it'd be." He glanced down at his hands, ashamed of how desperate he sounded. Pam didn't interrupt. She just listened, which was more than most had done in years. Kevin took a deep breath and continued, the dam breaking. "I was a contractor, you know. Had a crew, steady work. Then the recession hit and the jobs dried up. Savings ran out fast. Then came the late notices. After that—" He paused, swallowing hard. "Well, you can guess the rest." He tried to laugh, but it came out bitter and hollow. "Funny, right? I spent my life building homes for others, and now I can't even keep a roof over my head." Pam's expression remained calm, but her eyes softened. Kevin felt the shame creeping in again and tried to shift the focus. "I know you probably get asked for things all the time, I don't mean to be just another person with a handout. I don't know what else to do anymore. But Pam wasn't the type to dismiss a story like that. She had a response Kevin hadn't anticipated. Leaning forward, she rested her elbows on the table, her hands clasped loosely. The air between them grew heavier, quieter, as if the world had paused for this moment. Kevin's pulse quickened. He half expected her to hand him $1 and send him on his way, as others had. Instead, she asked a question that caught him off guard. "What's your name?" Kevin blinked, thrown by its simplicity. Kevin," he muttered, barely above a whisper. Pam nodded slowly, letting the name settle. "Kevin," she repeated, as if weighing it carefully. Then, after a pause, she said, "You know, Kevin, I've spent my career fighting for justice, prosecuting cases, shaping laws, and one thing I've learned is that everyone has a story. Good, bad, messy, it doesn't matter. What matters is how you choose to carry it. So tell me this, what's the next chapter of your story?" Kevin stared at her, unsure if she was serious. "The next chapter?" he echoed, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Yeah," Pam said, leaning back. "You're still here, aren't you? Breathing, talking, asking for $1. That means your story isn't over yet. So, what's the next chapter?" Kevin felt a lump rise in his throat. He didn't have an answer. Survival had left little room for dreaming lately. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I guess I just want to make it through the day." Pam's eyes narrowed, not in frustration but in thought. "That's not a chapter, Kevin. That's a sentence. You need a chapter, a real one, something you can build on." Kevin felt a mix of frustration and curiosity. He wanted to ask what she knew about struggle, but he held back. There was something in the way she spoke, not preachy, but like she genuinely wanted him to think. Pam reached into her bag and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. "Go here," she said, her tone firm but not harsh. "It's a shelter run by a friend of mine. They'll help you get cleaned up, find work, maybe even a place to stay. But it's up to you to take the first step." Kevin stared at the card, his hands trembling. Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice cracking. Pam's expression softened just slightly. "Because someone gave me a chance once, and I wouldn't be where I am today without it." But Kevin wasn't sure he could believe in second chances. Not after all he'd been through. His fingers hovered over the card as if it might shatter. The name and address printed on it felt like a lifeline, but doubt weighed him down. Could he trust this? Could he trust her? "I don't know, ma'am," he said after a long silence, shaking his head. "I've tried places like that before. They don't really help people like me." Pam's gaze didn't falter. "People like you? What does that even mean?" Kevin swallowed hard, avoiding her eyes. "You wouldn't get it. Guys like me, we're just forgotten." She leaned forward again, her voice quiet but resolute. "You think I've never been down? You think I don't know what it's like to feel like the world's left you behind?" Kevin looked up, startled. Pam's face, though composed, carried the weight of her words. "I grew up watching my family struggle," she continued. "I've seen hard times. Not the same as yours, maybe, but I know what it's like to wonder if things will ever get better. And let me tell you something, Kevin. It's not about how far you fall. It's about whether you're willing to get back up, even when everything's stacked against you." Her words hit Kevin harder than he expected. He opened his mouth to argue, but found himself speechless. Pam's tone softened. "Look, I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I do know this. Life isn't fair. It never has been. The only thing you can control is whether you let that break you or build you." Kevin felt tears prick his eyes, but blinked them away. "It's not that simple," he said, his voice cracking. "No, it's not," Pam agreed. But simple doesn't mean easy. It's tough as hell. But if you don't try, you'll never know what could have been. Kevin stared at the card again, his mind racing. He thought of the nights spent on cold concrete, the meals scavenged from trash, the faces that turned away daily. And now here was this woman, a stranger, a powerhouse, telling him he was worth more. For the first time in years, he felt a spark he couldn't name. Hope, maybe, or just the realization that he had nothing left to lose. "I'll think about it," he said finally, his voice barely audible. Pam nodded as if that was enough. "Good. That's all I'm asking." Kevin clutched the card tightly as he stood to leave, unsure how to process it all. Pam's words echoed in his mind, stirring memories of better days and dreams that once felt within reach. As he took a few hesitant steps away, he turned back. "Thanks for listening," he said awkwardly, his voice nearly lost in the street's hum. Pam gave a small nod, her expression unreadable. "Take care of yourself, Kevin," she said simply before returning to her coffee. But Kevin didn't see her hand falter slightly as she picked up the cup, or the way her jaw tightened for a moment, holding back emotion. Sitting alone again, Pam let out a slow breath, staring at the empty chair. It wasn't the first time she'd been reminded of her own journey, but this time it hit deeper. She'd faced her own battles, grueling cases, personal sacrifices, and she'd never forgotten the people who'd believed in her when the odds were long. For Pam, helping Kevin wasn't about politics or optics. It was about paying forward the support she'd once received. Meanwhile, Kevin wandered the streets, the card still in his hand. He passed shop windows where his reflection stared back, tired, worn, defeated. But for the first time in a while, he felt something shift. He stopped outside a laundromat, staring at the flickering neon sign. With the little money he had left, he decided to wash his clothes. If he was going to show up at that shelter, he wanted to look presentable. It wasn't much, but it was a step. The hardest and most important one he'd taken in years. His first visit to the shelter was overwhelming. The fluorescent lights, the hurried footsteps, the buzz of voices. But the staff was kind. They didn't judge him for his state, and for the first time in years, Kevin felt seen. Not as a problem, but as a person. Days turned into weeks, and though the road wasn't smooth, he began piecing his life back together. The shelter helped him land a temporary job at a nearby warehouse, where he proved himself reliable and hardworking. With the money he earned, he moved into a modest shared apartment, a small step toward stability. Through it all, he thought of Pam Bondi. He'd kept the business card, now creased and worn, as a reminder of that pivotal moment. One night, after a long shift, Kevin wrote her a letter. He thanked her for the kindness she'd shown at the café and shared the progress he'd made. He didn't expect a reply, but writing it felt like closure, a way to honor the woman who'd given him a second chance. Months later, Pam received the letter. Sitting in her quiet office, she read it carefully, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She folded it neatly and tucked it into a drawer with other keepsakes from her career. For her, it wasn't about recognition. It was about extending the compassion she'd been shown when she needed it most. Kevin's story didn't end there. Inspired by his journey, he began volunteering at the shelter that had helped him, sharing his story with others who were struggling and offering the same encouragement Pam had given him. Slowly, he became a symbol of resilience and hope in his community. The cafe on Melrose Avenue remained a quiet backdrop for countless passers-by, unaware of the life-changing conversation that had unfolded there. But for Kevin and Pam, it was more than a chance meeting. It was a testament to the power of human connection, a simple gesture that rippled outward in ways neither could have foreseen. For those who hear their story, it's a reminder. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can spark the greatest transformations. Thank you for watching till the end video. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories.